Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing a review on this 1977 Cessna 172N model. So the first Cessna 172 was built in 1956. It was made out of a Cessna 170. That's the model that it kind of came from and was designed from. It is the most successful airplane in the world and is well known as one of the best trainers that you can buy. They've sold, to my knowledge, more than 42,000 Cessna 172s. They're an extremely popular plane. The first planes came out with a Continental 0300 engine that had 145 horsepower, I believe. And they've since upgraded that to a Lycoming 0320. And this is powered by a Lycoming 0320, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a walk around on the exterior of the plane, and I'll point out a couple things. Then we're going to talk about the performance numbers of the plane, and then we're going to hop inside for an interior tour. And I would have liked to take you guys flying in this plane today, but unfortunately the weather is not great out. It's right around freezing and it's drizzling outside a little bit, so we're not going to go flying today just because I don't have a death wish. So we're not going to go flying. However, I did get my pilot's license in this plane. I did all my training in this specific plane right here. And I definitely know how it flies, so I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that towards the end of this video. All right, let's do a walk around. All right, so starting up near the front, this is obviously the engine. We talked about that a little bit. Lycoming 0320, 160 horsepower. And then this is obviously a high-wing aircraft. So that's kind of the main difference between the Cherokee that we have versus this. This is a high-wing aircraft. And we'll talk about more of the differences in a little bit. But for fueling and to check the fuel and everything, you actually have to climb up kind of on top of the wing a little bit. And I'm actually going to perform that for you right now so you can kind of see that. And it's actually not extremely difficult. However, if you're older or have some health issues, it definitely would be something to consider. All right, so you just have a handhold right here, a step here, and then a step here. And then you're up on top of the wing and you can check the fuel or fuel up the plane. Moving along, we've got a strut here, tie-down ring. This plane has nav lights and strobes. They're right here. And they have a little, I guess, wire so you can see that they're on from inside the cockpit. These have wingtips that slightly droop, and I believe they started that with the 172M model, but I'm not 100% sure. And ailerons are obviously right here, and flaps here. These are electric flaps. And in the 172N model, I believe they came standard with electric flaps, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. Moving on, you've got an antenna here. And then you've got your elevator and rudder here. It's at a nice height to check everything. This is not a de-ice boot. It's just rubber molding. Elevators here, it's good size. You've got your elevator trim tab here. It's easy to check pre-flight. You can look down in these little access cutouts, make sure that the bolts are in the hinges in their proper place. The rudder is right here. Obviously, it does not have a rudder trim. It only has rudder trim tab. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, there is rudder trim optional on the 172N models, but this does not have it. Other side of the elevator here. Now, it does have a baggage compartment right here, and I'll open that up for you guys so you can get a look at that. Hold it. If I can get the right key. There we go. Baggage compartment's right here. It's a fairly decent size for the plane. I would not say it's as spacious as a Cherokee, but it is here, and it's got 120 pounds maximum, and then I believe it's like 50 pounds on the little hat shelf. Other flap here, aileron, same wingtip, and same lights and strobe. You've got a red light here for your nav light. Your stall warning is right here, and then your tank vent is here for your fuel tank. Then your pitot tube is right here. And your static port is right here. Now, this has wheel pants, which makes it look nice. The downside is you cannot check the tire as easily. You can still kind of look down and see the tire, and you can look from the front. You see a little bit of tread, so you know kind of the tread it has, but you won't be able to check for bald spots. Then it has a little door right here, actually. It's spring-loaded to check the tire, and they're supposed to have 29 PSI. So that's kind of a neat feature. All right, so we're back up near the front. You have the propeller here on the front, obviously, 2 landing lights here. You've got a carburetor, the intake here, and air filter, nose wheel, exhaust. I don't know if that's original exhaust or if that's aftermarket. I'm not 100% sure. But that's it for the walk-around. All right, so now for the performance numbers. Like I mentioned, Lycoming 0320, 160 horsepower. Now this particular model of the 172 November actually had engine issues with the first engine they put in. They put in an 0320, and that model had issues. And they fixed it in the next series of 172s. Now this engine, I'm sure, has since been worked on. They're a fine engine if you overhaul them, fix the issues with them, or move to a different 0320 model. And I also know I've flown a 172 that has a 180 horse engine as well. Now this plane cruises at about 110 if you're pushing it, and it'll burn 9 to 10 gallons an hour. So it's not extremely speedy. About on par with a Cherokee 140, 160, a little slower than a Cherokee 180, and obviously much slower than like an SR20 or something like that. Useful load on this plane is not great. This particular model, I believe, has a useful load of only 721 pounds. I need to check in the weight and balance, but unless I correct it, it's 721 pounds from what I remember from my flight training, which is realistically 2 people, full fuel and bags, maybe a third small person if you drop out the baggage. So it's not great. Takeoff and landing distance is reasonable. You can get short takeoff landing kit for the airplane if you want to, but the performance is on par with everything else. It's decent. And yeah, there's nothing super special about that. Now, the one thing that I like about the 172s versus the Cherokee is that it glides a lot better. The 172, hit your best glide speed, it glides very well. The Cherokees tend to sink down, and that's been a historic problem for all the Cherokees. The Cherokee 6300, Saratoga, anything Cherokee model, especially with the Hershey bar wing, they just don't glide very well. All right, so let's jump in and let's take a look at the cockpit of this aircraft. All right, so we're in the cockpit of the 172, and it's fairly similar to everything else, obviously. You've got your standard 6-pack and your CDIs beside that. This has 2 of them. It's got an audio panel that's Bluetooth, Garmin 430 WAS unit, a KX155, and a GTX 330 for the transponder. Also has EGT, and then your fuel and oil pressure are on the left. Amp gauge is below that. Then you've got your primer, your master, your mags, your lights, your fuses, and then in the center you've got your prop controls, some more lights, and then you have your electric flaps over on the right with the cabin air controls. Moving down, you've got your elevator trim and your fuel controls. And this will draw off of both tanks as opposed to selecting either the left or the right. And this particular model also has seat belts with shoulder harnesses, which is a nice safety feature. All right, so as far as room in the cabin, the cockpit is fairly roomy. You've got good leg room, decent shoulder room. You're still going to be fairly shoulder to shoulder with your flight instructor, but it's not insanely bad. I have good headroom even with a headset. My head's just about touching the ceiling, and I'm like 6'2". So excellent headroom. Now I'm going to jump in the back seat and put the seat where it would be if I were flying and show you guys what the back seat looks like in this aircraft. Now, a strong selling point of the 172 is its rear seat legroom. As you can see by my legs, with my pilot seat about where I would be for flying it, I have generous legroom and knee room, shoulder room. If you had 2 people back here, which you're not going to because of weight, would be very cramped back here. It's not very wide. It definitely tapers in the back, but it's still okay. I have my own armrest back here, a little ashtray, my own window. And something to mention on the 172 N models is they have a back window. Earlier models didn't have that, and many aircraft don't. They marketed it as OmniVision, and it was kind of a flop. It slowed the aircraft down by a few knots. Didn't really do anything for the pilot's visibility, but it's kind of a marketing gimmick for them. So, headroom. With a headset on, I would definitely have my head up in this plastic, especially if I sat up straighter. I guess I could slouch a little bit because I have a lot of knee room. The reason why the pilot's headroom is so good, they have cutouts in the ceiling for them. And the headroom is a lot better. So, back seat is still decent for an aircraft of this size. However, like I mentioned, you can't get 2 people in the back. All right, so to finish this up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the aircraft flies. It's a great trainer, and the reason why, part of the reason why is that it flies well. It doesn't have any inherently bad tendencies. Now, one thing that some people think is a good thing, some people think is a bad thing, is that this aircraft stalls very abruptly. It has a really nice stall. Cherokees will kind of mushroom. This thing, if you pull it back, get to the stall speed, it will nose down hard, and you know you've stalled. I don't think they spin that easily, though, which is a good thing. So a lot of CFIs kind of like that it stalls, and the students can actually feel a real stall instead of just kind of a mushrooming and type of a thing. So that's one nice thing about it. The other thing about it for training is that landing can be tricky on this aircraft. It's easy to fly the pattern with, easy to stick with your airspeeds, but landing this aircraft is kind of tough. You've got to bring it in just right and get your flare just right. and you'll be treated pretty well. But it's not the easiest plane to land, and it's not extremely good in crosswinds. It's not terrible or anything, but it's not great in crosswinds. And the other thing on it is that this aircraft has electric flaps, which in my opinion aren't great for training just because they're going to get cycled and cycled and cycled and cycled multiple laps through the pattern. They'll get a lot of wear and tear on that electric motor, and they're just not as reliable as manual flaps. I've actually had the flaps in this aircraft not work on me once. I checked them before I went flying, not a big deal, and you can land this plane easily without flaps. You just bring it in. And slips and everything on this plane are fairly easy to learn. So like I mentioned, no real bad tendencies. There's a reason why it has the reputation of being a good trainer and one of the top trainers in the world, and why it has sold so well. And obviously part of that is because it was the first real mass market 4-seat training aircraft that could do a lot of other things as well. Now for price, aircraft prices have skyrocketed, especially in the last couple years. You used to be able to get a very well-equipped 172 November model with decent engine overhaul times, IFR, the whole bit for about $60,000 or so. Now you're going to pay upwards of $90,000 for a 172 N model with a 430 with decent paint, decent interior, and decent engine times. Not brand new, but decent. And I've seen them well over $100,000 if you want everything perfect. Now you could probably pick these things up for about $50,000 with a more basic panel and high engine times, but they are just expensive. So prices have increased and they are getting more expensive almost by the day, it seems. So I don't know when that's going to stop, but right now a well-equipped version of the aircraft is about $90,000. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this review of the 1977 Cessna 172 November model, please subscribe to my channel. I do aircraft review as well as aircraft ownership, some flight vlogs, and everything in between. If aviation interests you, make sure to subscribe to my channel. While you're there, hit the bell next to the subscribe button. You'll get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any questions about the video or any comments in general, please drop down in the comment section below this video. Let me know, and I love to respond to all of you guys' comments. So drop down there, say hi, drop a question, comment, and I'll make sure I respond to that. All right, lastly, please like the video if you haven't done that already. That just helps out my channel, and I make sure that you guys like what I am uploading. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. See ya.